Oh, we're talking with an entrepreneur. He's got a lot of experience to share. He runs masterminds, does coaching kinds of things today. He's also a comedian, podcast host, speaker, etc. Listen in. It's good conversation. Hey, everyone. I'm Bill Gallagher, host of the Scaling Up Business Podcast, your friendly neighborhood scaling coach. And we bring these Getting Real episodes to you all the time now, where we talk with entrepreneurs about their journey, about their experience, that kind of thing, as they go. I don't know where I first met David, but I'm looking forward to our conversation today. Before we get into it, reminder that our Getting Real episodes are sponsored by our local EO chapters in the Bay Area. EO is also known or formerly known as the Entrepreneurs Organization, and it's a global organization for entrepreneurs. We have 3 chapters in the Bay Area. It's a member-led organization where you can connect, learn, and grow together with entrepreneurs. So if you'd like to connect with more of them or like learn kind of how it goes and what's cool about it and all that, you're going to go to eonetwork.org and either apply or get more information there, eonetwork.org. Anyway, I've been a member of the organization. I first joined about 22 years ago, and I've had several different companies in it over the years. So it is the place where Scaling Up was born, and I encourage you to check out eonetwork.org. I'm joined now by David Gonzo Mammano, who has been an entrepreneur for decades and done 7 businesses from scratch, and now also coaches others, not as one of our Scaling Up coaches, but in similar way to our work, very related. He's had multiple companies on the Inc. 5000 list. He's been a TEDx speaker, an adjunct professor. He did our EMP program, where the Scaling Up work was born, initially called the Birthing of Giants program, now known as the EMP program. And his most recent book, Crash and Learn, Lessons of Business, is a top Amazon business bestseller. Make Love in the Workplace, I think, is awesome. I have a friend who's promoting some similar ideas of a appropriate nature. And anyway, he's got a whole world of stuff, and he'll share more. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you, Bill. Happy to be here. And you're making me talk about everything that I'm doing. You make me realize that my ADHD has certainly gotten the best of me. But thank you.
Oh, yeah. You're like a mess. In getting ready for the show, I asked people like, oh, what's your main focus area? And he's like, well, it's Gonzo Enterprises, where I'm the CEO of.
Right. Yeah. You know, the saying, chase 2 rabbits, catch none. I got about 10 rabbits going on right now. So, yeah.
Yes, I think a lot of our listeners will recognize themselves in that. Let's dive into some of it. I was on David's show recently talking about our work and in particular the leadership areas. But David, talk about getting your start in entrepreneurship and what is it that led you to that? What's wrong with you that brought you to this place?
Yeah, so I started my first company back in 1995. When I was 25, and previous to that, I had been working in radio sales for 3 years. And nice people, a nice company, but I just, had that, burning desire to do something, right? And for me, it wasn't buying a franchise; it was really to start something from scratch, and then be in control of it. And not because I'm a Mussolini control freak. More, I wanted to really, create the standards, the quality, the culture of the company, right? And really put my fingerprint on it. Like if I, were to launch a restaurant, I probably wouldn't buy a McDonald's franchise. I would want to, create my own boutique restaurant, so I wanted to have my fingerprint on the product. So I started looking at what my hobbies were in my spare time. And I volunteered a lot with youth. I was in a lot of, I was a big brother in the city program. I volunteered at a camp for for kids that had cancer. I was doing junior achievement. And I just thought, maybe I need to help youth with their future. And in college, I ran the college newspaper. and I loved it. I loved, selling print, creating the articles, all that stuff. So I combined those two. I had the idea, like, I'll start a new magazine for high school students and help them with college, career, and life planning. Because so many students at that time, especially, were going to college without a clue. It was much more affordable, and it was just kind of like you went. It was the thing to do, and you figured it out. Now with college being 40, 50, 60 grand a year, we're getting a little bit more like, why are you going to college? Just really think this through. But back then, it was like a free for all. I'm going. I thought, wouldn't it be neat to have a magazine that could help students, like, while they're in high school, to help them with college, career, and life planning, so that they ended up in a good place, good major, all that stuff, or not go to college, right? Like, that's right. We did articles, careers in welding and plumbing, and listen, if that's your calling, you could be very happy and make a lot of money too. So, and no student loan debt. So we talked about everything, and it was wonderful. I mean, long story short, we launched at 95, 10,000 copies, gave free to the local high schools in Rochester, New York, my hometown. Made a profit, went to Buffalo and Syracuse, our two neighboring cities, made a bigger profit, went to all New York State. Then we started franchising the magazine. So we franchised it all over the country. And it worked out very well. We became upwards of $5 million, very profitable company. That's when we were the Inc. 5,000 years and Rochester Top 100 years. And, my, feeling like king of the jungle, my poop didn't stink. Everything I touched turned to gold until my poop started stinking pretty bad, because the digital revolution caught up with print, and especially with teens, right? And so we ended up really getting our asses kicked. Our revenue went down like by 60% in about 3 years. It really, and I made the typical entrepreneurial mistake. I was so kind of young and quote unquote bold, but we're going to save this, right? So we'll bundle it with the internet offerings. And so we really kept the print going, and I kept the staff going. So I went from a very profitable company to not making money to building up debt, right? And finally, I'd like to think it was because of my own intelligence, but I ran out.
I've definitely done that. I bet lots of our listeners have times where they got deeper in debt, deeper behind, and kept thinking they were pulling it out or saving it, but in fact weren't making the fundamental changes
We'll find a way, right? We've always worked it out before until you don't.
We're losing money, but we'll make it up in volume.
Right. Yeah. And so I ended up. We ended up putting the whole magazine online, and it became really like a cost per lead business for colleges, advertising, very transactional. I didn't enjoy it anymore. So I found somebody in New York City that was more of a digital marketer person, and I sold it to them. So, I was able to stop the bleeding, plug some holes. And then I've started a few businesses since then. Most recently in 2016, I started this company called Avanti, which means move forward in Italian. So kind of like next step. And I developed a coaching program. I was doing events for entrepreneurs, my podcast, all that great stuff. But it really naturally turned into a monthly meetup for entrepreneurs in Rochester. We got about 100 members paying an annual fee. And it was after work, first half, beer, wine, hors d'oeuvres, networking. Second half, I'd bring in a great speaker. Somebody like you to teach them about sales, marketing, leadership, culture. Sometimes it was an entrepreneur sharing their story. It was really great. But then, actually we built it up big time. Like I said, over 100 members. We started expanding chapter models, different cities, Buffalo, Toronto, New York, New Jersey, et cetera. And then what happened was this thing called COVID, that where in-person events were not all the rage. And so we went online, and, and people were showing up at first, but I think people got zoomed out, Zoom fatigue quickly, less and less people showing up, and then certainly not signing up any new members, right? For this in-person event thing. Unfortunately, I kind of lost interest. I still have some people that we do events for online, but I rebranded about a year ago to Gonzo. And that's my nickname. That's my fraternity name that kind of stuck. I like to think it's because of Gonzo journalism, maybe Gonzo entrepreneurship. I'm like immersed in entrepreneurship to be able to tell the story. But no, it's because I look like the Muppet. So we'll get that straight. But I rebranded my podcast now, which you were on last week. It's called, or 2 weeks ago, called the Gonzo Experience. And, I interview great entrepreneurs like yourself and have them share the good, bad, and ugly. right? You have the story behind the curtain when they crashed and maybe almost burned, but instead they rose like the phoenix again. In fact, that's my most recent book called Crash and Learn. And now that's developing into coaching programs. And we do different coaching than scaling it. We focus on helping people develop their thought leadership either into like a podcast or a book or speaking. So that's what we focus on. But more so, I'm starting to create mastermind groups and retreats. And my retreats are mixed with adventures. So we'll go to like Sedona, and in the morning we'll do the typical retreat agenda. Then in the afternoon we'll go hiking, mountain climbing, horseback riding, things like so. Kind of really good for the ADHD entrepreneur who can't sit in a room all day. So we'll get you for a half day, and then we'll get you outside doing some stuff. So that's where I'm kind of like my 3.0 business is leaning towards.
Love this. I also had a newspaper in high school, started in high school, while in high school. Mine was not Gonzo, it was the Guzzler. And you can guess our subjects were about where the parties were, and what kind drink cocktail mixes, and then how to sneak alcohol into major events. Those are some of our major topics in
Expose,
our weekend Guzzler.
Yeah, that's great.
I would not call that a for-profit venture.
No, it was for fun venture, right?
5,000 list. Yeah. That's
definitely for fun adventure, right? So
for fun. Yes. So share a couple of things. I think it's always interesting to notice the lucky breaks and the setbacks and the big mistakes and regrets and like the range of it. It's why we call these episodes Getting Real. Tell us first about when you look back on your career, what do you think has been your biggest or the lucky break that first comes to mind?
I think with my first business, I just I hit a great wave, because what happened in 1995 was we were reaching like the peak of teenagers in America. It was the whole baby boomers, kids growing up, yada, yada, and all that stuff. And there was just so many kids going to school, and colleges had a lot of money to market and advertise and do a lot of, and then it became like a pissing match where they would try to outspend each other with marketing. And so there was just a lot of money going around in the education market. So I was able to really ride that wave and grab a lot of those ad dollars for the magazine and our website. Then as we hit, the late 2000s, we peaked, and then that population started to go down, and then you add the digital revolution kicking, print's butt. So that's what hurt. But I think the big break is, I think it was divine timing, right, for me to start that business at that time.
And then to ride that for a while. So what, if you think about your biggest breakdown, crisis, challenge, what would you say that was?
Well, I think so. In 2014, that's when really the shit hit the fan. That's when I realized like we weren't going to make it with their current model. That's when I finally admitted and added up all the debt that I had a significant amount of debt, and I realized that we needed to do some drastic things like letting people go, changing the business model, thinking about selling. It was very tough. And 5 years before that, I thought I had the Midas touch, right? I'm like, and people joke that being an entrepreneur, like, at some points you feel like king of the world, and some points you feel like you want to jump off a cliff, and often that can be the same day, right? So I certainly had was definitely feeling like maybe I don't have it. Maybe I just got lucky, and then I realized that that's not true. I did have a great timing and a great break with riding that wave, but at the same time, I created a multi-million-dollar business from scratch, and I know I can do it again.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm reminded when you said that, I bet others have a similar thing, but there was a time early in my career where I grew a business that I didn't own, right? But I started a unit within another business and grew it over 500 million. And I really thought it was me, not consciously so much, but really like I'm still arrogant today, but then it was maybe higher, and I was younger, and I really thought, yeah, I'm brilliant, I know what's up, that kind of thing. And then when I started on the next couple of different business ventures, I was really humbled by the fact that I couldn't just say it and it would happen. I couldn't just, like, it wasn't so much me, and it was about a whole bunch of things. And I was really humbled by how much I needed other people, and needed to have better relationships, and wasn't as brilliant as I thought I was in my mind, and like that kind of thing. I think there's a lot of times where we stumble into something and then we're kind of going along, and we forget that we're at the center of something, we're in service of something, but we might not be quite as brilliant as we think we are.
Yeah, and I think that is a humbling moment, but at the same time, pat yourself on, because I'm sure you were a crucial piece of the pie. But I think organizations like EO teach us to not get alone.
Yeah.
When we do succeed, share the credit, and when we do realize that it just wasn't all on you either, and I think I want to write a book today called "Don't Go At It Alone," because I think that's the thing an entrepreneur can do, is to feel like, I got this. No. Get a coach. Surround yourself with your peers, to kind of round out those good days and bad days, and be able to talk things through. Even as a coach, you may say 3 words sometimes, but you just ask one question, and just the entrepreneur is able to really formulate a response and just focus and think something through, and all you're doing is nodding your head. But that was so helpful, entrepreneur, to be able to actually take a moment, take a deep breath, get the thoughts together, express them. Therapy, right? Vern Harnish talks about forum being entrepreneur therapy, right? And I read a book by the guy. He was a coach, and he goes, listen, I feel like if someone just went home and talked to their lantern, in their house or in their front yard every day, and just got everything out to the lantern, that would help. Now if you're a good coach, obviously you could bring that to the next level, but just getting people to talk things through and just being able to talk things through is just so helpful. And that's one thing that I really urge new entrepreneurs to do, is to take advantage of organizations like EO and coaches like yourself.
This time of the year, maybe every time of the year, but I always notice as we're recording this, we're heading into the home stretch for the year, and people are feeling overwhelmed and pressure to deliver in the fourth quarter. I think it's easy to feel overwhelmed, and I'm reminded as you're saying that like sometimes that just like listening, asking the right question, and appreciating the struggle is really useful. I've had a number of conversations in the last couple of weeks with entrepreneurs all over all around the world, actually. And I'm kind of like, well, you're doing the right things. You're setting priorities, you're having meetings, you've got dashboards, it's all lining up against the strategy. But it's still hard. It's never going to not be hard. It's going to be hard for the rest of your life until you quit, die, or retire. So you might as well just embrace the suck and honor who you are, that seeks out these kinds of challenges, that lives life this way. Because it's, there's moments of success, there's setbacks, there's more that you should be doing, right? Embrace it.
Yeah, and if you're meant to be an entrepreneur, it's like your drug of choice. Like the good, bad, and ugly. We love it all. The messy birth and growing up of a business. It's tough. It's tough. Like we're the ones that wake up at 3 a.m. wondering how we're going to make payroll, or how we're going to deal with that problem employee, right? And but you know what? If you're meant to be an entrepreneur, you do, like you said, you embrace all the good, bad, ugly about that. And I had a mentor that said that one time, like, you got to have the bad times to appreciate the good times. And I think that's very true.
Yeah. I so did that for years. And I know lots of our coaches, they sweat the production, the capacity, the next release. They sweat making payroll. They have all of these things that that keeps them up at night, wakes them up at 3 a.m. And it is kind of what it is. There was a guy in our neighborhood here, just another billionaire, who started a company pre-internet in the good old-fashioned days of like doing physical things in the world, moving things around, selling things, and that kind of thing. And he was sharing about his experience and that kind of thing with me over lunch one day. And he's like, look, I have learned to appreciate my problems. I was telling him about some of our problems. And he's like, I've learned to appreciate my problems. He said, I drive down the road and in his super nice car, right? And he's like, I see somebody working on the side of the road doing this or that. And I think, what kind of life do they live? What kind of problems are they struggling with? And it's in that moment that I embrace my own problems. And I think, you know what? I have high quality problems. I should lean into this. And yes, I chose this life. Remember that you chose it.
Yeah, well, as they say too, first world problems, right? I mean, you're not, you're not going to go hungry, right? You'll figure out a way to continue to move forward, right?
Okay, so 2014 happens. Your business craters essentially in some fashion or another. What did you learn from that experience? How did you get better? What happened in that? How did you navigate that? What did you learn?
Well, I learned that I really need to pay attention to the details more and surround myself with people that can help me pay attention to the details, especially the financial details. When you're bringing in millions of dollars and and you have the expenses in line, there's a lot of room for error, right? And so I was spending money on things, looking back, like, never should have done that. Never should have done that. Never should have hired him. Never should have hired her. Like, looking back. So I think going forward, I've been very careful, and I realize, like, I do make mistakes, and I know what my superpowers are. I know what my zone of genius is, and to stick to that and surround myself with people that can help, compliment me in my weaknesses and listen to them and give them the authority and the permission to not be yes men and yes women, but no men and no women. Tell me when I'm sounding crazy. Tell me when I'm sounding like the entrepreneur that could do anything, right? The Pollyanna. Please, let's talk this through, and for me to really take a deep breath.
Tell the story of that. So you kind of see it. What happened? How did you handle it? Like, share the experience of it to the detail that you can.
So, when we were bringing in, in revenue, it was a small company. We're bringing in over $5 million, but, our expenses were well below that, right? So I was riding high. I was able to pay for my house and cars, cash, investment properties, a lot of money. Everything was fantastic. But when everything started to go down, a lot of people on my team and advisors were, hey, you're going to have to make tough decisions. You're going to have to let some people go, change the model. And I really didn't listen, right? That we can ride this through. We'll bundle print and web together with this work. It came to a point where I was forced to listen to the people helping me, and I had to work some advice on how to get through this period of life that I never got through before. And I did work with a scaling up coach, Les from Toronto. He helped me when at one crucial point of my business life where I was running out of cash flow. We only printed during the school year because we were a magazine for high school students, and summer used to be very low cash flow. And I just did my projections. We were going to run out of cash over the summer. Like, we literally, by like June or July, I was like, where am I going to get cash from? Right? Because I didn't have investors and all that stuff. And brought Les in, somehow afforded him, and he helped me like reimagine my cash flow. He asked me, how do we bill our customers? And I said, well, we bill them on a per issue basis. The magazine comes out. We'll take the invoice or rip out their ad from a magazine and we'll send it to them so that's proof that the ad ran. And then 30, 60 days, they'd pay us. And that is standard for newspaper magazine publishing, per issue, tear sheet with the invoice, 30 to 60 days, right? And and so Les, what a guy. He's like, well, why don't you just bill them up front when you get the order for the whole school year? And oh, by the way, this most of our advertisers were colleges, and most of them got their budgets approved and placed orders in May, June, or July, right, for the next school year.
Yep.
So I was like, well, at first I think I said, no, we can't do that. It's not the way it's done. He goes, why don't you just try it, see what happens? Okay. I listened to him. I listened to my advice.
Wait, hang on 1 second there. Because that right there is freaking gold. Your business is failing. The outside coach comes and you're doing things the normal way the industry does. And he looks at it from outside eyes and he's like, yeah, why don't you just bill it like this? Like there's the money there. It's just not the industry standard. And right. Your initial response is that's not the way we do things in this industry, right? There's so much money in that little vignette, that little bit right there. Right? That is gold. Yeah. Don't do things just because everybody's always done them that way in your industry.
Yes, very much. That saved my business. It transformed us at that time. Because so then we were able to invoice everybody for the whole school year, all the editions, not just one at a time. We did them all in I think early June. And, we billed $3 million because that's what we had on the books for the next school year. And I would say about 80% of the clients paid the whole bill up front. Some couldn't, like some of the state schools, and the armed services, they did need proof. But most of the other clients, and I even got some phone calls like, thanks, Dave, that's a great idea. Instead of having to cut you a check 5 times a year and blah, 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 one and done. So some people were thanking me, right? So I went from what's going to be a devastating cash flow time period that I didn't know if I was going to survive, to, because of less, having the most money I ever had in the bank in my business because we had all those prepayments, right? So now the trick was that we couldn't spend it all, right? Like we definitely had it allocated throughout the school year for payroll and other expenses, but it was nice having all that cash in the bank up front. To take a deep breath with. I'd rather have the cash now than later, right? Yeah,
massive breakthrough there.
Yeah.
And then did you end up folding it? So that sounds like you had a breakthrough that addressed your cash, but it sounds like you're not in that business anymore.
Yeah, well, so when I worked with Les, it probably was about 3 or 4 years before the crap hit the fan. It was just growing cash flow concerns as a business because we were expanding when we started working with Les. But then, in 2014, that's when the poop hit the fan big time with the digital revolution. And that's when it really started to decline. So what happened was I put it all online. I convinced the franchisees, let's go all online. And then I sold it. So someone bought it in New York City and she's still doing it today.
Awesome. Get out.
Get out. Exactly. Yeah. It was not my zone of genius anymore.
So when you think about it, what is your zone of genius? What's your superpower? What are you good at?
Well, like you, I have my own podcast. I host events. As you mentioned, I'm doing a stand-up comedy show next month. I used to do some comedy back, when I in my 20s, and I'm combining business and comedy into like a Tony Robbins meets Jerry Seinfeld type of show. And so being on stage, hosting, podcasting, I think that is really my zone of genius. Love doing it. And then the way I monetize that is, making connections. And then, these mastermind groups and these retreats and everything, that's the way I'm going to monetize the utilizing my zone of genius.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. That is a core kind of thing, that interviewing people and speaking and entertaining, but you do have to think about if you're going to make it a business or not.
Right. Yeah. There's got to be a business model behind it, unless, you're going to be the John Stewart of entrepreneurs, or just be a professional public speaker, which,
Right.
I don't know if I want to do that. Right. I mean, I have 3 kids at home, and I don't know if I want to, be on the road 200 days a year. Right. And it's kind
Some of our friends and past guests and that kind of thing, Dave Rendell, Mike McAllowitz, Jack Daly, many of those guys are working the public speaking circuit on a regular basis, right? Getting that next gig in the next town and that kind of thing. I watch my dad do that, and I watch some of these friends do that, and I'm like, I like the speaking, but just doing that can be a little bit challenging. There's certain things about like the podcast, our coaching, our workshops that are nice, consistent revenue over time without that up and down of, I booked a gig here, I booked a gig there, that kind of thing. And of course, the public speaking was tough in the last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, funny you mentioned Jack Daly. I was just texting with him about an hour ago, and yeah, he's kind of my idol. Love the guy. In fact, he just put on Facebook that his melanoma has returned, so he can't donate blood, and he was urging people to donate blood, right? And I made an appointment, and I showed him, and then I actually have given blood 3 times now because of his post of him giving blood. He inspired me to give blood. So Jack's kind of my idol, big mentor, and a lot of respect for Jack. And Jack's one of those guys. It's when there's not a pandemic, he's on the road 200 plus days a year. Guy's like 70 something, and he could out energy, probably beat the crap out of me type of guy. he's quite the.
Has a lot of energy, but especially at this age, he is unstoppable.
If he was 40, I'd say he got a lot of energy, let alone 70, right?
The other thing that you mentioned, you do the stand-up comedy, and I've done one time of stand-up comedy at Caroline's in New York, and I got a coach, and we've had him on before. Matt Kazam was who coached me to do stand-up and helped me develop a set and like that kind of thing. And I find that was among the most challenging things that I've ever done, most confronting. And I'm like very happy to take the mic. But the idea that I would take the mic and then deliver a prepared set of remarks and try to be funny the whole time, like to make a wisecrack in the middle of my things. I've been doing that forever, but like to build it. Wow. The pressure on that was unbelievable. It really, but wow, did it develop me. So I highly recommend, if you haven't done it before, try that out. And a great guy to go to is Matt Kazam, who does a variety of things. They Laugh, You Win, Stand-Up Challenge, Humor Scientist. Those are some of his
last name? Kazam.
Kazam, yeah, Kazam.
Kazam. He's even got a great last name for that. It's kind of like Kazam, So,
he does, right? Is that not a great comedy? Yeah. Got a K, so it's already it's up to a good start.
I'm going to contact him. Maybe I got my routine coming up next month, and maybe I'll work with him a little bit to bring it to the next level.
Punch it up a little bit, yeah. And he's a good one. He'd be a good one on your show as well. Talk a little bit about teaching comedy too. He does a lot for with CEOs. Yeah. Awesome. So that's your superpower. Then what's your bad habit? What's your weakness?
That's a great question. I would say focus. I as you were reading my bio, I'm joking in the beginning of this interview, like, my God, I'm frenetic, and I think I am ADHD to some. I mean, I'm not like off the charts crazy, but focus is my kryptonite, right? It's just I do, for some reason, need a lot of different types of water running through my nose, and I just I need that sense of excitement on a regular basis, I guess. So so I'm probably working on 5 things every day instead of doing one really well. And as a coach, you'd probably, David, but I am working on it. So I'll share with you. I'll
Yeah.
share with you. So I had a guy in my podcast, the Gonzo Experience. His name is John Torrance, and he is a very successful business owner, YPO member, but he's also a PhD at Syracuse University. And he did a tech talk on ADHD entrepreneurs, using it as a superpower. And I took one of his assessments, and sure enough, he's like, "You're definitely ADHD. Go to a doctor if you want to see what level, but you have some level of it." And,
Yeah.
So I did go to my doctor, and she said, "You're not that bad. I mean, I could put you on prescription drugs." And I'm like, "No. But then I went to go see a holistic nutritionist, and she and you don't have to have a prescription for it. You can just buy it at the store. But I bought it from her. It's a natural supplement called GABA, GABA. And it's natural. There's nothing, prescription in there at all. It's all natural supplements. But if any of your viewers or any of the Build tribe here feels like they have some version of ADHD, I encourage them to try GABA, GABA. I've been using it, and it has helped me focus. It has calmed me down. I do feel it, right? And what it does, it actually calms your synapses down and just it relaxes them a little bit, but not too much where you're like feeling like a zombie. It just calms you down a little bit, And so that is the first thing I've ever taken to kind of deal with my ADHD, and it seems to be helpful.
Well, a lot of people who have things like ADHD, and we know around entrepreneurship, some of the signs are drug and alcohol abuse. And it starts off a little bit, hey, I just, I have a drink to calm down, or I hit a joint to calm down. And maybe today people are trying things like CBD that are a little less, but that can become an issue also out of time if it's unchecked. And we see a higher incidence of different kinds of addiction behaviors that develop. And then as you go in life and you work out, they become bigger and bigger problems if you don't find something that manages them. I've never heard of the GABA before, but it's probably worth looking at, like, how do I manage it? But then also, like, how do you leverage it, right? So not necessarily just to mute it, but we've had Dave Rendell on before talking about freak factor and how to embrace your weirdness to find your superpower and to exploit things. I know that a big part of my ADHD is the source of creativity. I find the connections and the inspirations and the remixes of things that other people don't necessarily see, right, along the way. And we have a lot of that around. Actually, it's a good place to mention our sponsor, EO. The Entrepreneurs Organization is filled with people with varying degrees of ADHD, and turning them into profitable things, learning how to live with them and balance it and go through all that. Some of that you get in Forum, our small, intimate groups where they support each other. As well as learning about it. Dave Rendell was a recent speaker. We've also had Cameron Harold speak, and he's another guy in our world who talks about ADHD and managing some of that, learning to use it, but also then to keep it from getting out of control. So to join a tribe of entrepreneurs, to learn and grow together, to find some people to really connect and share. Sometimes your problems as an entrepreneur can feel like bragging to everyone else. We have 3 chapters in the Bay Area. I'm president of one of them this year, but I've been around the organization for 22 years, back to when it was known as YEO. So highly recommend you check out and see if it's a fit for you. eonetwork.org for the Entrepreneurs Organization.
And this is unsolicited, but I will add to that, Bill, that I started years ago in 2003. I started a local chapter of EO. It was in Rochester, New York, and then we combined it with Buffalo to call it EO Western New York. But I was in it for about 15 years, and it's an incredible organization. And Vern Harnish, the founder, and now is the CEO of founder of Scaling Up. Tremendous resources that I definitely have left his mark. Between EO and Scaling Up. In the entrepreneurial universe for sure. So,
yeah. EO, YPO, very similar kinds of organizations. Probably a little bit more of our clients are YPO type folks today. We also have a lot of people from Vistage and from other groups. I think if you're coming from a Vistage, you'll find a very different character and personality in either EO or YPO. So, worth looking into.
EO, little bit more of the founders, right? I think in the EO, little bit more of we'll say the fraternity house of entrepreneurs. We do some great things, but we're a lot of fun too, So
fraternity and sorority. We have a very large number of women entrepreneurs in both in the Bay Area chapters.
Well, I think in Rochester and Buffalo, I think there's even more female members now. So absolutely.
So what is your biggest goal now? Do you have a BHAG today or something that you're working towards in the long term?
Well, what I would love to do, and I'm working on this, is have a daily show, much like what you're doing right now. Have a daily show, and maybe every weekday morning at 8:00, and have great guests like you, and really be like the Johnny Carson of entrepreneurship, Exactly.
You'll need an Ed McMahon.
I don't know if I need the 6 wives, but the professional part. Maybe the Larry King. Well, that's another guy with a lot of wives, but you know what I'm saying.
Kazam wasn't his character.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Going back, Johnny Carson is like,
the king. We could say Larry King. That's a little bit more recent, right? But and then of course, like we were talking about, having a model behind that too for revenue, but just really being known as the host of entrepreneurship. That's kind of a BHAG, but I feel like I have it in me, and I know that I would love it.
Nice. And so what do you think is the gap for you? Why aren't you there yet? What do you have to get good at between here and there to achieve that? What are you missing?
That's a great question. That's a great coaching question. And, I think it's just, I just got to start doing it. I just keep on saying next month, I'm going to start this daily show next month. And I think it's just the courage and the focus to just say, you know what, damn it, starting on Monday. And I'm not going to be perfect. Like Gary Vee says, he had like 3 views on his first YouTube video. And it's okay, right? So to your point, I just think it's a matter of just doing it, learning what's going well, what's not going well, and continuing to work on improvement. So
it's funny, that reflection, right? Things are always clearer in reverse when you look like you were just talking about Larry King and being Larry King of that. I immediately started thinking of Johnny Carson. I started talking about that. It wasn't till like a second later I realized I'm talking about a totally different person, but we're both kind of talking about icons of talk shows and that kind of thing. That reflecting back, but that willingness to then start something, right? And begin something, even if there's nobody listening or only a tiny number of folks listening, there's real magic in that, right? Like we started our show, nobody was listening. Now we have thousands of downloads, but it's been a few years that it's taken to build up to that point. And you could look around, you could go, oh my God, that Joe Rogan's got a few more listeners than me. But maybe if I was a fighting champion or you were.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to compare yourself against, somebody who was already a superstar before they got into podcasting, right? Michelle Obama,
right.
She's got millions of downloads already, but she's Michelle Obama, damn it, and
already, yes.
Conan O'Brien, he's got a great podcast that I love, but he's Conan O'Brien, right? So, that's there's the saying, don't compare yourself to others, compare yourself to yourself. Are you doing the best that you can do, and let the compound effect of that day after day speak for itself?
Yeah, it's a really telling thing. And that willingness to just leap out there. My first radio show was a complete accident. I was in a radio station late one night, and the next guy didn't show up. And the guy who I was visiting was leaving. He had to go. And station director, program director got on the phone with me. He's like, Bill, you know what to do. Like, you've been in the station. Like, just play whatever you want. Like, have a good night. I'm like doing my best impression of Ken Jordan at 3 a.m. or something. And it was an accident. And then he called me the next morning. He was like, Bill, I listened to your show last night. It was pretty good, man. Why don't you take that guy's spot? I'm firing the other guy.
Yeah, nice. Well, as Bob Ross would say, that's a happy accident, right? So,
yeah, happy little accidents.
Happy little accident.
Back in the news again. That's a happy little tree. Let's maybe add a little babbling brook right here.
Yeah. Happy little tree over here. Yeah.
Oh, that's probably a good place to end our show. I want to give a shout out to Lucy Summers, who's there. I can see her on my screen in the background helping, and our show scheduled and promoted and all that kind of thing. Also to Vern Harnish, author and creator of the original Scaling Up framework and the Rockefeller Habits and all that. Our show is produced, our audio is edited by the good folks at Podfly Productions. Albie Burge, Ayn Kudina, Tim McGowan, who get it all prepared, produced, out the door, get the show notes up and ready and all that kind of thing. Thanks again, everyone, for listening, for watching. Keep scaling up. We'll talk to you again next time. Bye-bye now.